Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Victory Leaders Lounge, number 2 today, if you're on my social media platforms. And today I have Paula, and is it Neff? Is that how you pronounce that?
Yeah, you're correct. Yeah.
I am Neff, Paula Neff, and she's going to be going into her introduction. We're going to be talking for about 30 minutes about her. But first, let me go into my quick promotion, and then we're going to just flow with the conversation. Okay, here we go. Victory Leaders Lounge is brought to you by Victory Leadership Coaching, home of the Warrior Leadership Coaching Certification and First Time Leaders course for new managers. Don't forget to check us out at victoryleadershipcoaching.com. You can also buy our books, buy my books at amazon.com. The books are Why Organizations Should Develop Their Leaders, a pocket guide, and Warrior Leadership, the journey from coach to entrepreneur. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to all of our videos on YouTube and Spotify and wherever you see it on any of these social media platforms. Okay, that is over with. So how are you doing today, Paula?
I'm doing good.
You
Yes. How are you?
Well, now that I'm here in this live room with you on all of these platforms, it's great.
Yeah. I'm glad to be here, so thank you for having me.
Of course. So Paula has her own business. She's actually a high performance coach. Paula, would you like to go into a little bit of your background and tell us why you do what you do and maybe a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, it's a long story. How many hours do we have?
Well,
It's
maybe we can get the miniature version.
Yeah, well, let's do that. Yeah. So actually originally from Finland, I live in Switzerland, so that's the one thing. And I trained in classical ballet, so that was my sport. And throughout a lot of things that happened in between, I went through a lot of hardships and things and discovered that had I had some kind of mental tools or, performance tools that I can work with my mind when I was younger, it probably would have been a little bit of a different story in my life. Not that I don't regret anything. I do believe everything happens for a reason, and that is the reason I am here. Is I had to go through the hardships, mental health issues and things like that, where so that I can serve people right now in my capacity. And I serve athletes and dancers as well, or other people who are on stage, and entrepreneurs who are very much like minded in this high performance field to perform better, especially while training themselves mentally. So, my mission is really to touch as many people as possible to really change the game in athletes in sports and especially dance, to talk and to really just make it a part of regular everyday training, that you train your mind like you train your body.
So just out of curiosity, what are some of the things you do to help people train their mind?
Well, it's usually quite simple things. It's just paying more attention to being aware. So being aware that everything is a belief. Whatever it is a belief. And so, you can change those things. It's not that you can change it like this, but you can. And that is really um, like kind of the beginning, the premise for everything, to become aware of that. And then with little things, I usually work with really young athletes. Most of them, the people I work with right now, are either in high school or in college, so they really don't have much time. So everything is done integrated into daily routines and that already exist more or less. So while you're brushing your teeth or while you're taking a shower, you can do visualization, or you can add meditation into different parts. You can focus on your breathing, which is something we breathe all the time, but we often forget that what a tool that it is for us. Or visualization, I would have to say, is like probably the number one, the most effective one.
I agree. In breathing, my goodness, it sounds to me like most of what you do is just help you help people with mindfulness.
Mhm.
There's a lot of clutter out in the world, and sometimes you got to forget all that. You got to feel how you're sitting where you're sitting. What
Mhm.
are your feet doing? How do you feel in your chest? All of those things, and just bring yourself into the present moment.
Mhm.
And with athletes, I could see, I served a career in the military, so I can see very clearly how that would be quite the benefit. I mean, you're always
Mhm.
training, you're always trying to follow the directions of the coach. You're listening to the guidance from the other players, because even if people aren't super experienced, everyone seems to know it all. And so, kind of just coming back down to center and being present with yourself, and how do
Mhm.
you feel, what
Mhm.
figuring out what you're doing and what's going right and what's going wrong, and figuring out from there how you can proceed with your training program, or maybe your current relationship, or whatever the case may be. I mean,
Mhm.
sports is not just one thing, it's everything. I mean, it's the entire way that you live. You can't be an athlete and not focus on every aspect of your life.
Exactly. And that's something a lot of people kind of forget. I also have to say from my training, when I was, young, and I was fully in the, 6 days a week, sometimes seven training, it's everything. It's everything. And then that is also kind of a dangerous place to be, because your whole identity is now tied to one thing. And, the risk is high because, for example, college athletes, 98% will not become pro athletes. So your career in that sense is over after those 4 years. And that it is like a big career that then changes. So if you have until that point associated your whole life, your whole identity to the sport that you do, and that's one expression of you in this world, then you're going to have a lot of problems adjusting to any other part of life once that's gone. And with these tools, the the point is also that you see yourself as something more, much more than just one expression of yourself, which happens to be very important, right? But it's not everything.
So AJC Art actually made a comment on what you just said. Let me see if I can put it up here. Gosh.
Awesome. I like comments.
Me too. I like it when people participate. It makes the live stream much more fun. So
Yeah.
this person says, "My life has been the continuous work on that balance of work and life outside of work." Oh my gosh. I think that work-life balance is super important. Even though it doesn't exist, you do have to focus in some areas to make sure that you are achieving whatever objectives you want. And
Mhm.
that's really where the balance comes in, because they people want this magic formula for a work-life balance, and it just doesn't exist.
No, I think usually I drop the work. It's a life balance because work is a part of a life. You're one human being and you're not being cut into different sections. And then you go to work and you're something completely different. So everything affects everything, regardless. What your mindset is will be going with you everywhere. So, and balance for me is movement. It's not a one point that is a balance because it keeps moving and changing all the time. So you have to keep kind of your life in movement, and you have to be curious about how do what's the balance right now today? Not that you have to consciously think about it, but just be curious to find that balance, to find your, the things that bring you more joy, I think.
Sure. Sure. Well, and I have my opinions, and I'll be careful not to go on a huge ramble here. So I'll ask you, what is one piece of advice to somebody who's not sure uh where to balance themselves in life? What's one comment that can be applied to anybody to help them figure out how to balance their life a little bit better?
Focus on what brings you energy. Like do a little energy kind of like 1 week, I would say. Not one day just, but like a 1 week. You keep this list of things. One side is what brings me energy. People, situations, topics, books, whatever it is. You feel like, oh, this is like a energy giver. This person, when I'm with them, or this topic that we talk about, it really energizes me. And then there are things, situations, topics, whatever, that take away your energy. So keep like a little diary for like a week. It's not going to be perfect and complete, but it'll give a good picture of right now. Okay, who are the people who give me energy, who take away? And then you figure out, well, since I kind of know, well, how can I reduce or eliminate things that really take away my energy? And how can I increase the things that bring me more energy? And then that list will also keep changing and evolving all the time. But, and once you start doing that, you will pay more attention to that too.
Yep. And I agree with that. And I, for me, balance is just being intentional with the way that you live, in my opinion. And I think that you pointed out two of the most important things. And that's, we always feel that burst of energy, but make
Mhm.
sure you document what that is. If you're really trying to find balance and you're trying to be your best self all the time, you know, really focus on what that is, and then take a break, write that down, and then keep and move on. Now, on the other side of that, we all oftentimes when we get that drop in energy, we tend to we tend to just wallow in it for a little bit.
Mhm.
But when you're there, also write that down. I agree
Mhm.
with that. I think that's an extremely good piece of advice. And make sure that you're not just keeping a mental journal, because you'll forget those things. Make
Mhm.
sure that it's written down somewhere, whether it's on a Word document or if it's on a physical pad of paper or whatever the case may be. Because if you're really trying to live your best life, you need to try to figure those things out. And you're right,
Mhm.
sometimes you can't get rid of everything that makes you feel bad, but there are
Yep.
some times where you have to get rid of some of those things. And AJC, to your point, it's not always energy conservation. It's figuring out what just gives you the most energy so that you're out there just killing it.
Exactly. And it changes all the time. I mean, certain things, certain people might always be an energy giver, but sometimes they change too, or topics of conversation or whatever. There are little nuances as well that within certain things that you notice once it goes, conversation, for example, if it goes too far, then it's going to be an energy taker. But then you have to find out where is that, so that you can set your boundaries and so you can say, okay, no, this is enough. This is now I have to step away, whatever it is. Being aware is really the key.
I agree. Awareness is all. I mean, breathing. I mean, when you and I had our one-on-one conversation before we even shot podcasts, we talked so much about breathing and why that is
Mhm.
important. When you're stressed out and you just take a moment and start breathing, you really
Mhm.
start finding out a lot more, and just getting into that moment and figuring out why you're upset. Sometimes we don't even know why we're upset. I mean, I think there are some times where I just kind of fly off the handle and I don't even know why I'm doing it. And so take those moments, take a deep breath, and just figure out why it's happening. And sometimes you won't figure it out, but just that breathing will calm you down.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you can just get back to normal, instead of anytime that you have that negative stress, it takes a little bit away from you. And so that's also something to keep in mind, because I find that whether it's screaming or just feeling sorry for myself or whatever the case may be, if you let those moments continue, they will
Mhm.
drag on and on and on.
Yeah. They say that, any emotion only takes 90 seconds. If
Oh,
you
really?
don't, yeah, any emotion. I mean, all of them are equal. And if you don't hang on to them and, don't let go of them, they will actually just come, they will peak and they will go away in 90 seconds.
Huh. I've never
And that's
heard
it.
that. Where
Yeah,
did
I
where
heard that. I wish I had the source, but it's like, I don't remember where it came from. But yeah, it is something that is, you know, but the thing is that it's easy to say, right? Just 90 seconds, let it go. But letting go is kind of the key there.
letting go is not easy to do. And sometimes, especially if you're used to one emotion, you get addicted to that emotion. So
Mm.
when it comes, you're just there and you stay with it. Now, that's probably okay if it's a positive thing, but even still, I mean, what's that positive thing? Does it come from this and doing the doom scrolling? Because if you have certain goals in mind and you're looking for that work life balance or just that
Mm,
life balance, then is that really helping you in the overall scheme of things, or is that doom scrolling on your telephone, or is
mm,
that hurting you? So it's not just the energy you get, because it also depends on what you're doing and where you're getting that energy. That's why you get a document.
yeah, and then with that scrolling thing, I think people don't like the word, but it's discipline.
It
Um,
is.
yeah,
Yep. Yep.
that's
And
what
some
it is.
and you know, the true definition of discipline is to do the things that need to be done, and those things are not always pleasurable. Um, I would say a lot of times, you know, we may enjoy the workout, but sometimes getting to the workout, especially if you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and that's your goal, is to start then so that you can get on with your day afterwards. Getting out of bed and actually getting to the exercise is not always
Mhm,
very pleasurable, but once you get there, you know you like it, so you're in it at that point. But getting to
mhm.
do that thing is the discipline part. Whether it's the thing you want to do in that moment, if you know you have to do it, just doing it anyway because you know you
Exactly.
have to.
Yeah, and it's oftentimes, and sometimes even with clients, my clients kind of, they're very disciplined usually. But sometimes also they're saying, well, I just don't feel like it, or especially with things that, we implement together. They're new and they're not a part of a routine. It's like, let's say, for example, meditation, or really making sure that you do visualization daily. Those things are not, or they are not a routine or a habit from the beginning, and so then you really need the discipline, and then it's really that consistency. That's like a key word with everything. If you only do it a few times, and then, for example, with the athletes, things go well and you're winning, and you get to your goals that you set to yourself. The danger is if it happens very soon, that you're like, "Oh, I'm fine now. I don't have to do all of that now." And it's like, "No, no, that's exactly how you have to do it now." So you keep going, because there will be losses, there will be setbacks, there will be things that will, they're a part of the game.
That's true. And if you give up just because you got a little bit ahead, then you're not going to see what level you could have achieved.
Exactly.
Yep.
And that's the key point, is then not to stop, and to be like, all right, even though I'm winning, I'm top, I'm number one, I'm, all of this, I'm just gonna keep going.
Yeah. And sometimes that requires setting another goal. There's nothing wrong with that. Just because you hit one benchmark doesn't mean you met your overall objective. Can you
Exactly.
tell us, Paula, a little bit about? You keep on bringing up this visualization. I kind of think I know what that means to me, but when you talk about it, what does that mean to you?
I think of it in two different ways. One is visualization of, when it comes to athletes or dancers, for example, is to learn moves, to practice moves, especially the ones that you find the most challenging. For me, it was very essential to learn choreographies. I'm very fast. I learned very fast, but that's because I used to go over and over and over again in my mind, just closing the eyes and go through things, go through the whole choreography, or at least the parts that are the most difficult, the new ones. So, and that will teach your body. It is just as effective, and this has been proven in scientific studies, that it is just as effective, more or less, than if you were practicing the same thing physically. Now, you can't be practicing physically all the time, so the visualization adds to it. So you're actually teaching your body, your muscles, how to do it, how does it work, and that's one way. Is this specifically for some moves, some parts of a game, for example, that you find the most challenging ones usually. And the other part is with visualization. You can visualize future events. You can visualize your success. You can visualize things, for example, in 3 years, in 10 years. Now, you don't have to know exactly what it's going to look like. You don't have to know exactly, but you can visualize the whole environment. And the point that in that one is that you really take in everything, like in all your senses. Like you are in it. You close your eyes, you really dive into that experience. You can smell the grass if it's outside. You can feel what's under your feet. You can taste the air. You can all of this, and then you do go through these experiences. Like I did that with a soccer player last week, and he was then visualizing just goal. He was making one goal after the other and just getting into this emotion of what it feels like when you actually then score. And it's just you get goosebumps and you get all in it and you do it over and over again. So you get your mind into this, you're training your mind to become something that you maybe are not yet.
Okay. So does when they get to that point, one thing that I've used, and I'm curious if you do or not. So when they get to that thing, that overall objective, and that's what they're visualizing, do you use that and like do backwards planning with your clients as well to help that? Well, if that's your overall goal, what do you think all the things are that you need to work on to get to that goal?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And usually, that I also tell them, like, usually the first thing that you think that you need to work on is probably not the most important. It's like, the first answer is usually not you know, you have to go a little deeper.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So,
or sometimes that deeper is that they're holding themselves back in some way. And so any action is better than no action. So what's that first action that you can take? Because then the ripple effect starts, right? Once you take one action that you planned out, you become successful or you learn from it, then now that next action is going to be that much easier because you learned that there was no harm in it.
exactly.
And that's not just in sports. I think that's in everything. A lot of people are trapped in whatever lifestyle that they're living because they don't think there's another way. And I
Exactly.
and so I think the parallel that I'm seeing here from just overall executive or life coaching to what you're doing is that most people, it doesn't matter what your background is, to get to the next goal they have to do something that they haven't done yet, and they haven't done it yet because it's uncomfortable and nobody wants to step outside of their comfort zone.
Exactly. And so, yeah, I encourage, and I have to say, young athletes, especially, they have kind of both sides. Is they have this courage. They do step outside of the comfort zone. However, there are a lot of beliefs that they believe are the truth, which it's just a belief. Your truth is your truth. If you believe this is your truth, then it is. However, if you want to, for example, in the case of this soccer player, his belief was, I'm not a scorer.
Mm,
I'm just someone who assists, but I don't score. But it's bothering him because he wants to score. So then it's all about changing that belief, which is, it takes a little bit of time, and it takes discipline, it takes action and thought and modalities that will take you outside of your comfort zone. And you are going to be kind of fighting against your own self. You have resistance because your old self will tell you, no, this is not what you are. This is what you are. But then you have to keep on going, keep on doing, meditation and those visualizations, and the pre-game prep, which is something that we do, and just to get yourself into that mindset, always telling your brain, look, that old belief is not the truth. My thoughts are not the truth. It's just a thought. It's just a belief. This is what I am.
so there's another complexity there because I'm very familiar with the team dynamic. So once people get themselves to the point where they're ready, I want to be that goal scorer, but I've been the assister for all these months, all these years, or whatever the case may be. Now, what is guidance or maybe something, a success story that you might be able to share with us on how you got somebody to create that level of trust in their team so that they can be, because there's a level of trust that goes with that. You
Mhm.
used to assist, now they have to trust you with the ball when you get close to the goal, because usually you weren't that guy. So now
Mhm.
he wants to be that guy. How do you convince them to give you the ball so that you can go in there and do what you got to do?
Well, first it starts with communication. Like, don't leave those things as a secret. And first of all, you can't do that. I mean, they won't pass you the ball, right?
Right.
Unless you tell them this is and this is something that has to be, of course, um, as a sometimes a strategic decision, and then also, the coach plays a huge role, and this is one of the biggest ones, is the communication, especially with the coach. And so we also work on that. Like, each coach is different and they have different styles. They're humans too, and sometimes I have to say it, they do have like an ego, that plays a role. And so you have to be able to go around that and find your way, because you can't change that person, however they are communicated, but you can communicate. And the more you communicate openly, the more that comes back. The first thing is you have to trust your team. You have to trust your team. So if there is no trust that you know that they have your back, then they will listen and they will take you seriously when you say, this is something I aspire to be. If that trust doesn't exist, you're probably not going to communicate anything, because you won't trust that they will have, your back. But usually, at some level, the teams are built in a way that, like, I mean, from military, it's like, if there's no trust, how could you do your job? And the same
Right.
thing with sports, right? You have to know these people have my back and they support me. So if I do have a venture somewhere and my coach sees it as something that we can go into, well, they are going to be behind me. They're going to help me get there.
Yeah, that's right. Convince the biggest influence that this is what you're gonna that this is what you want to do, and that you would be good at it, and then that person will convince everybody else, and then you're done.
Yeah, exactly. And then, but remember that you're still, and this is something that's sometimes a little bit difficult for some people to understand. It's like you're still only responsible for your own game. Like, even if you have a team and there's, 11 people on the field at the same time, but you are one person, you can only play your own game. You cannot be responsible for the person who's passing the ball to you.
That's why
They
you have
are
to
doing
create
their
that
thing.
trust. Yep. 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 But it is your responsibility, and this is why leadership is so important, because it, even though you're not responsible for them, you are responsible for helping everybody on the team to trust you, if that's what your overall objective is. If your overall objective is, I want to be that guy that's assisting everybody, and that way we can get the most points on the board, and then we'll win every game. That's
Mhm.
great. A lot of people do that, and a lot of people, that's what they want, because assists, that's a valuable stat. But another
Yeah,
valuable stat, if they want to put the goals in the net, well, that's a pretty big responsibility. So there's a lot of
mm,
convincing that needs to be done there, because from a servant leadership perspective, you have to prove your worth. That way they will give you the ball.
exactly.
And if
Yeah,
you don't prove that you can do it, maybe that's extra practices every night.
yeah,
And grabbing a couple team members and saying, "Hey, look, I want you guys to work with me so that I can do this, and I'm not letting the team down when you guys give me the ball and I'm close to the net."
exactly.
I
Yeah,
love it so much.
yeah.
Paula, just we're almost done here. I always ask every single one of my guests at the end, what's one nugget that if you could share anything with my audience, what's one nugget that you would share?
That's a good question. I could give like a whole bunch of nuggets, but
Well, as a former or still an athlete yourself, professional athlete, I'm sure, because it's every athlete, even if it's an individual one, it's still a team sport. So what?
exactly.
So is there one specific that sticks out to you?
Yeah, it is. I mean, my whole thing is always, always based on joy. everything that I do and in how I lead my life or try my best to do so, and what I also want to do through my work is, that connection to joy. Because why do you do what you do? Like, why are you an athlete? Why are you, for example, with entrepreneurs, why did you decide to take that journey? It's a hard one, and in any case. And so if that doesn't bring you joy, then you got to find something else. Like it has to be something like, for me, for example, it's just something that I have so much joy from doing what I do at that it just goes across all the borders. Like, I want to share this joy with the person I work with. I want to share it with as many people as possible. And if it's, as a performer, share it with the audience. They can feel my joy. The other people on the stage, they share my joy because my love for what I do. And if that is something that I can always connect to and find like, oh, this actually, I'm doing this because I love doing this, because I want other people to feel how I feel. And that's why I do it. That's why I train hard. That's why I invest in my mental training as well. That's why I do all this stuff. And that joy is really at the bottom of everything, because without that, why would you do it?
I agree. That's a wonderful message. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed this episode. Paula, thank you for joining me, and thank you for allowing me to be on your podcast a few weeks ago. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure knowing you and knowing your journey. I'm glad I got to hear it again.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course. And in the audience, if you enjoyed this, please wherever you're seeing this, like the post, subscribe to my channel if you're on YouTube. But the most important thing is, if you want to keep the conversation going and keep conversations like this happening, comment below and ask questions. We'll respond to them and all that sort of thing. But also, just be a part of the conversation. When we go live, I'm glad you learned a bunch, AJC. But when we go live, attend to the events, ask questions, be there. It's a great time. These events are much better when we have audience participation, like AJC, who's still here, that said he or she learned a bunch. But everyone, thank you for always being a part of my audience. And again, Paula, thank you. And we will see you all next time.